What is going on, gang? Welcome to the fourth installment of What's the Racket? I'm your host. I go by the name of Syntech, and we got a pretty good episode lined up for today. It's been a little bit since I released episode 3, so really looking forward to kicking it with you guys today. For episode 4, I'm going to shift away from player interviews for a little bit and talk about some gameplay topics. Today, I'll be discussing some core gameplay topics. We're going to talk about the game's current meta, which is a pretty big topic right now. And I'm going to go over some general point distribution in PvP. These are some of the most discussed topics out there, and there's no real documentation to support them. So today we're going to go over them at a general level. And I've also got several exciting updates from the One Hamsa team regarding future development for RNX. So if you're interested in the game's development, you're going to want to hang around for that. Should be a pretty good one there. So let's go ahead and dive right into it. First, we're going to talk about the game's meta. And to get us started, first I want to talk about what a meta is. We'll need to briefly explore what the word actually means as it relates to video games in general. So I'll put a screenshot up here with a link that touches on what exactly a video game meta is. Let's see if I can find this real quick here. There you go. So you can go out to the internet and do some research, and you'll see roughly the same thing. I've just included the link that I used as a source here as well. So in short, a video game meta is when you're trying to play a video game a certain way that leverages the most optimal strategies available. Now, I have a small section highlighted in the screenshot here to describe that. Playing a certain way. That's going to be important going forward. So the current meta we're in for RNX is what I like to call the who goes first meta, commonly known as the who goes first meta, meaning that under certain conditions, if you play the game to control who goes first on the next wave, then mathematically you give yourself a large advantage over your opponents. That makes it the most optimal way to approach your gameplay, and that makes it the current meta that we're playing under right now. This is due to the fact that targets are designed in a specific manner. So the person who goes first has an uncontested chance to pick a target of their choosing, which is typically the one that's worth the most points. Since all targets on a wave are not always equal, you leave your opponent with zero chance to make up the points that they missed out on because they went second. Now, there's a few waves in the game that offer a pretty decent turnaround shot. It's not every wave. There's only a few. And even on those waves, it's still not optimal to simply allow your opponent to go first just because of that. So I won't be going into really crazy detail here on how to play this way. For now, we're just going to discuss it at a high level. But before we move on, I do have a quick example that I can display for you guys. I have a video example I brought with me today. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Here you go, right here. This is going to work out pretty good. Let me just move it over to the screen here. So let me set the stage for you real quick here. In this example, you can see right at the bottom of the video there, we are at the 12-second mark in this wave. This is wave 2. We're getting ready to move into wave 3, and you'll notice that there's no targets in front of us here, okay? So what's getting ready to happen is you'll notice that my opponent is actually going to hit the ball towards the wall in an area where there's no targets on purpose. And the reason my opponent's doing that is because he wishes to stall so that he can gain first shot on the next wave, because both myself and my opponent know what the next wave is. Okay, we've played the set before and we know what's coming next. Neither one of us want to freely hand it over to our opponent, right? You can see I have one game up on my opponent in the set right now, and he's going to do everything he can to try and swing the match back to him. So in an effort to do that, he's going to try and kill as much clock as possible to try and make it so that I go last on this wave, therefore granting him the first shot on the next wave. So I'll go ahead and play the video for you guys here so you can watch how this plays out. And if you take a look at the wave timer right at the bottom there, you can see it's at 5 seconds, 4, 3, 2. And now he pulls the ball off the wall right at that last second. So now the wave timer has expired. It's my turn, and there's only one hit point target left on this wave. Okay. So now no matter what happens, my opponent has won the right to go first on the next wave. And I'll just let this play out here for you. There you go. So now you can see he goes first on this wave. So that's the example, or that's at least one example of how this meta plays out in game. As of today, we're not sure exactly how the developers feel about the current meta. For a while, they weren't even really aware of what it was because RNX tends to carry a smaller community than most other games. You won't be able to go out to YouTube and find thousands of videos on Racket like some other more popular games like Fortnite or Population 1 or what have you. So the conversation went unspoken for a while from an official standpoint. Also, you should remember that the developers are not always the best players of their own video game. It's important to note that there's a wild difference between playing a game and developing a game, right? They're two separate skill sets. So oftentimes, developers will rely on the more skilled players in the community to provide them with feedback. And this is usually how updates to the video games are rolled out. Developers will see how strategists are playing their game, and then they balance it out from there. So in the case of RNX, once the devs were up to speed with the Who Goes First meta, we never really got an official confirmation that they thought this was a net negative on the game. For all we knew, they could have liked the cat and mouse game of trying to control who goes first. And without any official response, nobody really knew where the devs stood on this topic. The exciting news is that I do have some updates from the developers regarding the future of the current meta. So we'll definitely discuss that in more detail later on. So that's kind of the idea behind the meta, what a video game meta is, and where we are today. I do have some personal thoughts on the current meta here. From a personal standpoint, I'd like to see the meta shift, right? And I'm pretty sure a lot of us would like to see it shift at this point as well. It's been a number of years since we've been playing this way, and it's definitely time to freshen things up a little bit. Personally, I'd love to see PvP shift more towards a raw talent meta, kind of like other head-to-head games out there. Excuse me. In order to do this, two things need to happen. The fight for who goes first isn't part of the game, and power-ups would need to be removed altogether. Now, they're two pretty controversial topics, but let's take a quick dive into them real fast. At the current moment, right, power-ups are way too overpowered in PvP, and they severely need to be addressed for balancing. But a world without power-ups means that the better shooter wins, right? Full stop. Right now, power-ups offer way too much potential in either direction, whether you're the player in the lead or whether you're the player trailing. So if you do these two things by removing power-ups and removing the fight for who goes first, this will now mean that on average, right, we would see more waves per set or per match played, let's say. And we'll get a chance to hit the more exciting shots that lie in the deeper waves on each set. You have to remember that sets are designed to ramp up over time. So the shots that have the most potential to swing the outcome of a match, those shots lie in the later waves. And that's definitely something we want to see more of going forward. You want to see a match won because someone actually beat their opponent, not because they got 3 swings with splash damage turned on and cleared a quarter of the points available on the wave, right? So if you're the shooter who's trailing, instead of you making up ground by getting a power up, you would instead need to make up that ground by hitting the bigger shots or maintaining accuracy while your opponent misses. AKA raw talent, right? It's just you and your game. If you're the shooter who's in the lead, you would need to maintain that lead by staying accurate while hitting the more complex shots because you're going to go deeper into the set rather than KOing your opponent off a power up when you're already in the lead. This type of behavior, it fosters a more healthy environment in PvP. As long as there's a power up to be offered somewhere on the map, then the optimal strategy is always going to be to play for that power up, to try and go for that power up. Now, whether you choose to play this way or not is up to you. But from a strategic perspective, that's going to be the most optimal way to approach it. Now, how the developers decide to approach this one will be very interesting. So make sure you keep your eyes open for that. Another thing to note here is that the game speed actually ramps up over time, right? This doesn't get talked about a whole lot. You may hear the announcer actually say it in the game and not even realize it. He kind of says like speeding up. So it naturally becomes harder to be accurate as the game progresses later into the set because the speed will pick up. But if you never get to those later waves because you got to go first 3 times in a row when it mattered, or if you KO'd your opponent on wave 4 due to a power-up, then we never get to the point where this actually happens. So again, another reason to make some of these changes. There's a lot of ways to kind of approach this here, but personally, this is where I'd love to see the game move towards, especially considering they want to make this a spectator sport and get into the VR Olympics, which has been talked about in the past. I think removing the use of power-ups in PvP is actually a huge win for the game. They offer way too much potential in either direction right now. If power-ups do continue to stick around in the future, then they should at least be nerfed going forward. And the bigger problem is that power-ups are just one more thing to fight for. So instead of fighting to go first on the next wave, you would fight to go second. Because remember, power-ups are always offered to the second shooter. So that just incentivizes the who goes first meta even more. Again, you can choose not to play this way, but that's still the optimal approach to gameplay. So those are some of my personal takes on the current meta. Make sure you guys keep your eyes open for any updates going forward. It's going to be real interesting to see what changes, if any, come about in the future. So that's the current meta. Okay, we covered some good ground there. Let's shift over to point distribution, okay, because this is going to be a pretty exciting topic here. So for this topic, what I want to do is I want to discuss how points are distributed in PvP. I feel like this question gets asked a lot, and there isn't any real documentation out there on it just yet. Keep in mind that I'll only be discussing how points are allocated in PvP. Make a note that point allocation in solo play and custom sets are a little bit different. So point distribution is when points are allocated to a shooter based on your shot, right? So generally speaking, you hit the ball at the ball rolls, and it collects points for every positive hex that you hit. You may have even seen some of the numbers flashing in game and in the visuals when you're out there playing. So that brings us to the immediate question of what is a positive hex, right? So a positive hex is any hex that contains a target or a booster. Boosters are the little blue pluses that you guys see floating all around. Points are compounded for every positive hex the ball touches during its roll. So you don't just collect a flat number of points per hex. So this means the more positive hexes you hit, the more points you score during your turn. You do want to watch out though, because if you hit a downer, aka skulls, they will take points away from you. So just be careful there. So to kind of illustrate how point distribution works, I'll toss an image up on the screen here. Let me see if I can find it for you guys. My stuff is kind of all scattered around here. There it goes. Yeah, there you go. Okay, so I'll use my mouse to point so you guys can kind of follow along with me here. So each one of these numbers represents a hex in the game, a positive hex, okay? So you have 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, and then it kind of stays at 25 for a little while. If you hit a blank hex in between any one of these, it has no impact other than stopping the ball from rolling its maximum distance. Your points will still be compounded even if a blank hex is hit in between any variation of these numbers. So you don't have to worry about that there. So this algorithm right here equals 250 points if you add all this up, okay? And that 250 number is actually important, and there's a reason that I stopped there. Once you hit 250, you start to accumulate what is known as diminishing returns. So that means after 250 points, hexes are no longer worth 25 points per hex, which is right at the end here. They'll actually start moving down in points. Now, I don't have the algorithm in front of me since it hasn't officially been shared with us. But if you pay attention in game, you can actually see the numbers flash on the hexes in the game as part of the visuals. However, I do have another illustration I can show you guys here. I do have a video that I brought with me. Let's see if I can pull this up here. Somewhere's in this folder. Here you go. Okay, so in this example here, we're playing on open space. We're getting ready to transition into wave number 3. And there's a really big shot that is offered to the first shooter on this wave. So I'll just let this play out here. And here you go. So I make my approach, and you can see right here. See if I can pause it. There you go. So what you can see here, there's a lot happening, and it happens really quick. But if you pause this and actually break it down, what you'll see is the first hex I hit is worth 5 points. The second hex that is hit along the ball's path is worth 10 points. And if we go back and look at our diagram here, we can actually see that makes sense. Here's 5, and here's the 10. So based on what we know, the next hex that I hit, the next positive hex that I hit, should be worth 15 points. And if we go back to our video, and maybe if I can just pause it, see if I can get my pause game up a little bit. There you go. So 15 points right here. It happens pretty quick. And then the next hex is worth 20, and then it bounces off the wall, and then we get to that 25 range, right? So now everything's going to start being worth 25 points. 25, 25, 25. You'll notice that no points are awarded for hitting the nitro hex here. That's because this is a neutral hex. It's not worth any points. It has a function in the game. It doesn't provide any actual points. So you'll notice that there's a gap in between these two 25s because this is a neutral hex. So what's going to happen here is we're going to start collecting 25 points per hex until we hit 250 points. And then if you notice, as I pause it right here, you can kind of see in the background here, you can kind of see this 24, right? So that means at this point of the ball's roll, I've already accumulated 250 points or more. So now I'm in diminishing returns territory. And as I let this video play out, what you'll notice is that these hexes up here, now these are boosters, aka pluses. What you'll notice is that these are now worth 17 points. Right, so we've stepped down from 25 quite a bit. And as it plays out a little more, I think it touches this last text here. Yeah, and I see this one's worth 13. Okay, so that's the idea behind diminishing returns and how they work. The reason diminishing returns was put in place was so that you couldn't score 500, 600, 700 points on a lot of these shots that are sitting out there today. It was really overpowered. So that's kind of the idea behind diminishing returns and how it works. So one other important thing to note about point distribution is that there is a soft cap in the game of 500 points. So what this means is that no player can score more than 500 points in one shot. And there's actually only several ways in the game where this is even possible. So you won't see it too often anyway, but just know that there is a soft cap of 500 points. I do actually have a video of a 500 point shot just to kind of show you guys what it looks like. I did bring one with me. Let me see if I can find it here. Here it is. So this is the set called Doe. I believe it's pronounced Doe. Never really knew the actual pronouncement of that. I think it's Doe. So this is actually still true today. This is wave number 2 of Doe, and this is one set where you can score the 500 points, potentially score the 500 points. And I'll just kind of let this one play out here. Also, it's important to note, you can really only score the 500 points when it's in this configuration. When this wave is flipped upside down, it's a lot harder to score the 500 points. I've personally not been able to do it. I'm not sure that it can be done when it's in the reverse configuration. But when it's in the original configuration like this is when it's more likely to happen. So this is what it looks like here. And if you kind of watch this play out, what you'll notice is that you'll see the 25 points per hex stick around, because at the time that I recorded this video, there were no diminishing returns. Also, I don't believe there was a soft cap in the game either at this time. So this is a little bit older video, but just to kind of show you guys what 500 points looks like and one of the ways you can score it on. That's it. All right, so moving on here. So here's a quick pro tip side note for those of you who are still following along. Remember, when you're out there scanning for your shots, for these big shots, make sure you measure risk versus reward. So what this basically means is the shot you're about to take worth the risk for the points you could potentially score? Right? Now, there's a lot of factors that go into making that decision. Just make sure that when you're out there scanning for your shots, you're measuring risk versus reward. So last thing to note on point distribution is the bonus points. Okay, so you do receive bonus points in the game for closing out targets, meaning that if you have hit enough hexes of the target to close it out, you'll be awarded 50 bonus points. So if you have a 3 hit point target in front of you and you hit 3 hexes that encompass that target's landscape, the target will then close, and that will award you bonus points for closing that target. So this was a way to incentivize closing out targets versus leaving them open. Closing out targets awards you those 50 bonus points, but make a note that you'll also receive 50 bonus points for closing out the last target on a wave. So there's bonus points for closing a target, and then there's bonus points for closing the last target. So what that means is if it's your turn and there's only one target left on the entire wave and you shoot at that target and close it, you will receive the 50 bonus points for closing a target. Then you'll also receive the 50 bonus points for closing the last target. Both of those mechanisms will trigger. So in this situation, you would receive 100 bonus points on top of the points you scored for the normal point allocation system. All right, so again, this was a system put in place to incentivize closing out the last target on any given wave. Another pro tip side note for you guys is that from a mathematical standpoint, those 50 bonus points are generally not enough incentive to give up the opening shot on the next wave. So this is another reason why we were led to this current who goes first meta. So regarding the point distribution, again, I have a few personal thoughts on the allocation system. Personally, I'd like to see a slight change here in the way points are distributed. I think there's some room for improvement here. Something like buffing diminishing returns so that they start sooner, or even nerfing the normal point allocation system itself would work. I'd like to see games, again, I said this earlier, I'd like to see games go deeper into sets during competitive match play so that we can see more of the exciting shots in the later waves and have those shots have more of an impact on the game. So a shot that you would normally score 250 points on or above today, using this system, this recommendation that I'm saying here is that you would now have to work a little harder to get that 250 points. Or alternatively, you could approach your target the same way as you're used to and just settle for the lower points that you'll now be awarded under the new scoring system. And by doing this, it would keep games alive a little bit longer. And this would allow the player that's trailing to stay in the match from a safe distance while still rewarding the more accurate shooter. Remember, you have to make sure you're rewarding the more accurate shooter. Otherwise, the game has no incentive. So this would just force the player in the lead to maintain their accuracy for a slightly longer period of time while we get to those harder shots, right? And as the game speeds up and ramps up over time, it provides a little bit more excitement during the match. So to kind of summarize, by adjusting the point allocation system, the player who is in the lead doesn't necessarily have to work harder per shot to get the win if they don't want to, but instead would just have to maintain their accuracy slightly longer. So personally, I'm kind of hoping to see something towards that effect in the coming changes, whether it be through the point allocation system or even a new system that One Hamsa decides to implement would be okay. But I'm definitely looking forward to seeing something to that effect happen. I did bring another video example with me here. I do want to show you guys what it looks like closing out a target for the bonus points. I believe I have something with me here. Double check and see if I can find this. I know I have one floating around here somewhere. Oh, is this it? Yeah, here you go. So this is wave number 2 on the set called Reps. And this will be a good illustration on the bonus points that are awarded for closing out a target. So what you can see here, let me rewind this real quick, is if you take a look, you'll notice that these targets in front of me, right, each one of these targets is worth or is 3 hit points, right? So if I deal 3 hit points worth of damage to each one of these targets, the targets will close. And that will proc the bonus point system. Okay, and I think that happens somewhere in this video here. Yeah, right here. There you go. So what you notice, if you take a look at the ball trail and just kind of go slightly back, this top 3 hit point target, you'll notice that I actually close it here. So you'll see the ball trail. If you follow the ball trail, you can see I hit 1, 2, I just clip the bottom part of this hex, and then it hits this hex here. So I've hit 3 hexes that encompass a 3 hit point target. So now the target closes because I've dealt 3 hit points worth of damage to it. So in closing this target, I'm now awarded bonus points for closing that target. And if I let this video play out, I think it even gets into diminishing returns territory. Yeah, you can see here the hexes start coming downwards because I've already gone over 250 points in my shot. So that's a pretty good illustration of closing out a target and the bonus points you're awarded for doing that. And then here's the diminishing returns right at the tail end of that. Okay, so that's pretty much everything that we have to discuss today for point distribution. For those of you who are still here, congratulations, because I do have some exciting updates directly from the One Hamsa development team regarding future updates for the game. So let's go ahead and get right into that because This has been long awaited. So, from an update perspective, what I have for you guys today is that I've been authorized from One Hamsa to share some of this information with you. Now, I don't have exact timelines and ETAs or deadlines for this yet, but I do have the confirmation that some things are coming. And I think you guys are going to like this. So we do have confirmation that the developers are working on addressing the current Who Goes First meta. Now, we don't know if that means that they dislike the current meta or they like the current meta or they just want to refresh strategies. But either way, we can definitely expect some gameplay changes coming that should shift the meta or at least bring about some new playstyles. Either one. So pretty exciting to hear that update. Number two, second thing I have for you guys here is that we do have confirmation of a new PvP season starting. I know a lot of you guys have been asking. I've been getting the question a lot myself. There's, again, no firm timeline on this, but the devs have confirmed that they are working on a new season and fully expect to roll out Season 6 of RNX PvP. So the future looks bright there. And we also have confirmation that we have some new content coming for Season 6. So far, I can only confirm personally that there will be some new sets for Season 6 PvP. That's the only thing that I've gotten confirmation on. Personally, I would love to see some new accessories or even some new avatars, some new rackets, what have you. But none of that has been confirmed. So pretty exciting to hear that there's some new sets coming our way in the near future. So the order that they're looking at rolling out development looks like this here. I have a screenshot for you guys that I laid out for you. So this is the order that they're looking at developing in. Step number one is that they want to update the current gameplay. Step number two is that they want to create the new content, and then we want to roll out Season 6 of PvP. So it's going to go in that order. My guess is that updating current gameplay is their way of saying they're going to address the meta somehow. Create new content is likely them saying that they're going to create the new sets for Season 6 after they've updated the current gameplay, and then obviously rolling out Season 6 right at the tail end of that. So once again, no firm timeline on any of this stuff, no ETA, just the confirmation that these things are happening. A lot of you guys may or may not know, we were kind of in a dark period for a while the One Hamsa team kind of focused all their efforts on a new venture they have. Today, we know this new venture to be called Underdogs. For those of you guys who are in the Discord, make sure you head on over to the Discord and check out all the teaser and news that they've released on Underdogs. Looks really cool, man. They even have a Twitter page out there as well with some gameplay footage. So you can head on over to Google, run a Google search for Underdogs, One Hamsa. You'll likely get all the information you need that way too. So now that some of that information has been released about Underdogs, it seems like they've shifted some of their efforts back towards updating Racket NX. So the dark period is looking to end soon. Again, I don't have any updates for you guys, but that is what I have as far as future development goes today. So that's all I have for you guys today. You can check out my YouTube for more gameplay videos and episodes of the podcast. My name on YouTube is Syntech33. I'll put a flash up on the screen here so you guys can check it out. Thanks for kicking it with me today, gang. I appreciate you guys stopping by. Peace. I'm out of here.